The words stung like a slap, though they were tossed carelessly, almost as an afterthought. "You smell like old people," Ethan muttered, his nose wrinkling as he passed me in the kitchen, his voice low but sharp enough to cut. I froze, my hands gripping the edge of the counter. The scent of lavender lotion I'd applied that morning suddenly feeling like a betrayal. I was 70 years old. Yes, but I'd never thought of myself as old in the way he meant it musty. Irrelevant. A relic to be tolerated. I forced a smile, the kind I perfected over decades of swallowing small hurts, and said nothing. Ethan didn't notice. He never did. My daughter, Lily, was in the next room, humming as she arranged flowers for the dinner table. She hadn't heard him, and I was glad. Lily adored Ethan, her husband of 5 years, and I'd never dream of planting a seed of doubt in her heart. But as I chopped vegetables for the stew, my mind churned. Ethan, with his slick suits and startup dreams, had no idea that the money keeping his tech company afloat came from me. The old woman he dismissed was the silent investor who'd written the checks that paid for his office, his staff, his entire vision. I wasn't always invisible to him. When Lily first brought Ethan home, he'd been charming, all smiles and compliments. "Mrs. Harper, you're a legend," he'd said, his eyes bright with ambition. I'd liked him then, his energy, his drive. He reminded me of my late husband, Tom, in his younger days, full of ideas, hungry to prove himself. So when Lily told me Ethan was struggling to fund his startup, I didn't hesitate. I'd inherited a small fortune from Tom's real estate business, and though I lived simply, I wanted to help my daughter's family. I funneled the money through a third-party investor, insisting on anonymity. Ethan thought he'd won over some faceless venture capitalist. He never suspected it was me. That evening, as we sat around the dinner table, I watched Ethan closely. He was animated, talking about his latest pitch to investors, his voice brimming with confidence. Lily hung on his every word, her eyes sparkling with pride. I wondered if she knew how much of his success rested on my shoulders. I wondered if she'd ever know. "Mom, you're quiet tonight," Lily said, her brow furrowing. "Everything okay?" I smiled, brushing off the ache in my chest. "Just savoring the stew, sweetheart. It's a good batch." Ethan didn't look up from his plate. "Yeah, it's decent," he said, his tone clipped. I caught the faint curl of his lip, as if the food or maybe my presence left a bad taste. I pushed the hurt down, deep where it wouldn't show, and changed the subject. The next morning, I sat in my study, a small room lined with books and memories. The sun streamed through the window, catching the dust motes in a golden haze. I opened my laptop and checked the financial reports from Ethan's company. The numbers were promising, sales were up, and the latest product launch had gained traction. My investment was paying off, but the victory felt hollow. I'd spent years building a life of quiet generosity, supporting Lily and her dreams. And now Ethan's, too. But his words echoed in my mind, a reminder that my efforts went unnoticed, unappreciated. I thought about confronting him, about revealing the truth. I imagined the look on his face: shock, maybe shame. But then I thought of Lily, of the life they were building together. She was happy, and that was enough. Or so I told myself. Over the next few weeks, Ethan's comments grew bolder. "This house could use some airing out," he'd say. Or, "You should try a new perfume, Mrs. Harper." Each jab was small, but they piled up like stones in my chest. I started avoiding family dinners, making excuses to stay home. Lily noticed. Of course. She'd call, her voice soft with worry. "Mom, Are you sure you're okay? You seem distant. I'm fine, darling, I'd say, forcing cheer into my voice. Just getting older. You know. The irony wasn't lost on me. One afternoon, I found myself at the community center, where I volunteered teaching literacy classes to seniors. It was my sanctuary, a place where I felt useful, valued. My students, most of them in their 60s and 70s, greeted me with warm smiles. They didn't see me as old people. They saw me as Eleanor Harper, the woman who helped them read their grandchildren's letters, who listened to their stories with patience and care. Eleanor, you're a godsend, said Margaret, one of my students, as she handed me a handwritten thank you note. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes were bright with gratitude. I tucked the note into my purse, my heart swelling. Here, I wasn't invisible. Here, I mattered. But at home, the weight of Ethan's words lingered. I started to question myself. Was I out of touch? Was I clinging to a past that no longer existed? I looked in the mirror, tracing the lines on my face. They told a story of loss and love, of raising Lily alone after Tom's death, of building a life from the ashes of grief. I wasn't ashamed of those lines, but Ethan's disdain made me feel like I should be. One evening, Lily came over alone, her face pale. Mom, I need to talk to you, she said, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. Her hands twisted together, a nervous habit she'd had since childhood. What's wrong, sweetheart? I asked, my heart sinking. It's Ethan, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He's been acting strange. Secretive. I found some emails. He's been meeting with investors behind my back, talking about selling part of the company. I frowned, my mind racing. The company was thriving. Why would he sell? Unless he was in trouble. My stomach twisted. Had I misjudged the financials? Or was there something Ethan wasn't telling us? Lily, do you know who these investors are? I asked carefully. She shook her head. No, but he's been so stressed. He won't talk to me about it. I'm scared. Mom, what if he's hiding something? I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. We'll figure it out, sweetheart. Together. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Ethan's words mingling with Lily's fears. I'd spent years protecting my daughter, shielding her from pain. But now, I wondered if my silence was doing more harm than good. Maybe it was time to step out of the shadows. Maybe it was time Ethan learned the truth. The next morning, I drove to Ethan's office, a sleek building in the heart of the city. The glass facade gleamed under the autumn sun, a monument to his ambition and my investment. I hadn't told Lily I was coming. This was something I needed to do alone. Inside, the receptionist greeted me with a polite smile. Mrs. Harper, what a surprise. Ethan's in a meeting, but he should be free soon. Can I get you some coffee? No, thank you, I said, settling into a plush chair in the waiting area. The office buzzed with energy young employees tapping away at laptops, whiteboards covered in diagrams. It was a world I'd helped create, yet I felt like an outsider. When Ethan emerged, his tie loosened and his face flushed. He stopped short at the sight of me. Mrs. Harper, what are you doing here? I need to talk to you, I said, my voice steady despite the nerves fluttering in my chest. It's important. He hesitated, then led me to his office, a corner room with a view of the skyline. He closed the door and leaned against his desk, arms crossed. What's this about? I took a deep breath. choosing my words carefully. Lily's worried about you. She says you've been secretive, meeting with investors behind her back. I want to know what's going on. His jaw tightened, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of guilt in his eyes. It's just business, he said, his tone dismissive. Nothing she needs to worry about. Ethan, I said, my voice firm. I'm not just Lily's mother. I'm the one who funded this company. Every dollar that built this office, that paid your staff, that got you those investors that came from me. The color drained from his face. He opened his mouth, then closed it, his hands dropping to his sides. You, what? I'm your silent investor, I said, holding his gaze. I didn't want you to know because I wanted you to focus on building something great, not on pleasing me. But now, I need the truth. What's going on with the company? He sank into his chair, rubbing his temples. I didn't know, he muttered. I thought it was some big shot VC. Well, it's just me, I said, a wry smile tugging at my lips. Now talk. He sighed, his shoulders slumping. We're in trouble. The last product launch cost more than we projected, and we're burning through cash. I've been trying to find new investors to keep us afloat, but they want to buy out a majority stake. If I agree, I'll lose control of the company. I leaned back, processing his words. My investment was at risk. But more than that, so was Lily's future. Ethan's company wasn't just his dream, it was hers, too. They'd built their life around it. Why didn't you tell Lily? I asked. He looked away, his voice low. I didn't want her to think I failed her. I wanted to be angry, to tell him he'd failed her by keeping secrets, by dismissing me, by thinking he could handle everything alone. But I saw the fear in his eyes, the weight of his pride. He wasn't a bad man, just a flawed one, like we all are. Ethan, I said gently, you need to trust Lily. She's stronger than you think. And you need to stop treating me like I'm irrelevant. I may be old, but I'm not invisible. He nodded, his face a mix of shame and relief. I'm sorry, Mrs. Harper, for everything. I stood, smoothing my skirt. Don't apologize to me. Apologize to Lily. And fix this. As I left the office, I felt lighter, as if I'd shed a layer of the invisibility I'd been carrying. But the real work was just beginning. Ethan's company was in trouble, and I needed to decide how much more I was willing to give, not just money, but trust, forgiveness, and faith in the man my daughter loved. Over the next few days, I dug into the company's financials, poring over reports and spreadsheets. It was worse than Ethan had let on. The product launch had been a gamble, and while it had gained traction, the costs had outpaced the revenue. If we didn't act fast, the company would fold within months. I called a meeting with my financial advisor, Clara, a sharp woman in her 50s who'd helped me manage my investments since Tom's death. We met at a quiet cafe, away from prying eyes. Eleanor, you've got options, Clara said, sliding a folder across the table. You could pull your investment now and minimize your losses. Or you could double down, inject more capital, and hope Ethan pulls it off. I sipped my tea, staring at the numbers. Pulling out would protect my savings, but it would devastate Ethan and Lily. Doubling down was a risk, but it was also a chance to save what we'd built together. What do you think? I asked Clara. She leaned back, her eyes thoughtful. You've always been smart with your money, Eleanor. But this isn't just about money, is it? It's about your daughter, and maybe about proving something to yourself. I smiled, grateful for her insight. You're right. Let's double down. But this time, I want to be involved. No more hiding. Clara raised an eyebrow. You're going to tell Ethan you're taking a seat at the table. Exactly, I said. It's time he saw me for who I am. That evening, I invited Lily and Ethan over for dinner. I cooked their favorite roast chicken with rosemary and garlic and set the table with care. When they arrived, Lily hugged me tightly, her eyes searching mine. Mom, you've been so quiet lately. What's going on? Let's eat first, I said, guiding them to the table. We'll talk after. Dinner was tense. Ethan avoiding my gaze, Lily picking at her food. When we finished, I cleared my throat and laid out my plan. Ethan, I know about the company's troubles. I'm not just your mother-in-law, I'm your investor. And I'm not going anywhere. Lily's eyes widened. Mom, you're the one who funded his company. I nodded. I wanted to help you both, but I didn't want to interfere. Now, things have changed. I'm putting in more money, but I want a say in how it's used. We're going to save this company together. Ethan looked stunned, then grateful. Mrs. Harper, I don't know what to say. Say you'll work with me, I said, and mean it. He nodded, his voice earnest. I will. I promise. Lily reached for my hand, tears in her eyes. Mom, I had no idea. Thank you. I squeezed her hand, my heart full. For the first time in months, I felt seen not as an old person, but as a woman with strength, wisdom, and a stake in their future. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I threw myself into Ethan's company, attending meetings, reviewing budgets, and offering insights from my years of watching Tom run his business. At first, Ethan was hesitant, his pride bruised by my involvement. But as we worked side by side, he began to listen. I wasn't just Lily's mother or the old woman. In his kitchen, I was a partner, someone with a stake in his success. The company's biggest challenge was its cash flow. The product launch had drained reserves, and creditors were circling. I suggested cutting non-essential expenses and renegotiating vendor contracts. Ideas Ethan hadn't considered. You've got a good head for this, Mrs. Harper, he said one afternoon, a grudging respect in his voice. Call me Eleanor, I said, smiling. We're in this together now. Lily joined us, too, taking on a role in marketing. Her creativity breathed new life into the company's campaigns. And for the first time, I saw her and Ethan as a true team. It wasn't perfect, there were arguments, late nights, and moments of doubt, but we were moving forward. At home, I felt a shift in myself. I'd spent so long hiding my contributions, my strength, that I'd forgotten how good it felt to be seen. I started wearing brighter colors, experimenting with new perfumes, small acts of defiance against Ethan's words. I wasn't trying to be younger. I was reclaiming who I'd always been. One evening, as I was leaving the office, Ethan caught up with me. Eleanor, can we talk? We sat in a quiet corner of the office, the city lights twinkling outside. I owe you an apology, he said, his voice low. Not just for what I said, but for how I treated you. I was wrong. You're not just Lily's momierie incredible. I studied him, searching for sincerity. It was there, in the way his shoulders slumped, the way his eyes met mine without flinching. Thank you, Ethan, I said. But it's not just about me. It's about respecting the people who lift you up, even when you don't see them. He nodded, his face serious. I'm learning that. The company's turnaround wasn't immediate, but we made progress. We secured a new investor, not to buy Ethan out, but to partner with us. The deal gave us breathing room, and Ethan's vision began to regain its spark. I watched him and Lily grow closer, their trust in each other deepening as they faced the challenges together. But not everything was resolved. One afternoon, I overheard Ethan on a call, his voice tense. "I know we owe you, but we need more time," he said. I didn't catch the rest, but the worry in his tone was unmistakable. When he hung up, I approached him. "Trouble?" I asked. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "One of our suppliers. They're threatening to pull out if we don't pay by next week." I frowned. "How much?" 50,000, he said, his voice heavy. "We don't have it." I thought of my savings, the nest egg I'd guarded so carefully. It was enough to cover the debt, but it would leave me vulnerable. I looked at Ethan, at the man who'd once dismissed me but was now fighting for his family's future. I thought of Lily, of the life we were building together. "I'll cover it," I said. Ethan's eyes widened. "Eleanor, no. You've already done so much." "It's not just for you," I said. "It's for Lily. For all of us." He didn't argue. Instead, he hugged me. A quick, awkward embrace that spoke louder than words. For the first time, I felt like he saw Minute as an old person, but as family. That night, I sat in my study, writing a check for the supplier. It hurt to part with the money, but it also felt right. I wasn't just saving Ethan's company, I was investing in trust, in forgiveness, in the belief that people could change. The next week, we paid the supplier, and the company stabilized. Ethan and Lily threw themselves into a new marketing push, and I took a step back, letting them lead. I was still involved, but I didn't need to be in the spotlight. I'd found my place, not as a silent investor, but as a partner, a mother, a woman who refused to be invisible. As the months passed, I noticed a change in Ethan. He was softer, more attentive, not just to Lily but to me. He'd ask my opinion, bring me coffee during long meetings, even joke about my old people perfume with a sheepish grin. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. One evening, Lily invited me to a company event, a celebration of their latest product launch. The room was filled with employees, investors, and clients, all buzzing with excitement. Ethan took the stage, his voice confident as he thanked everyone for their support. "And there's one person I need to acknowledge," he said, his eyes finding mine in the crowd. "Eleanor Harper, my mother-in-law, my partner, and the reason we're standing here today. Thank you, Eleanor, for believing in us." The room erupted in applause, and I felt tears prick my eyes. Lily squeezed my hand, her smile radiant. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel old. I felt alive. The success of the product launch was a turning point, but it didn't erase the challenges ahead. Ethan's company was stable, but the market was fickle, and competition was fierce. I knew we couldn't rest on our laurels. I spent my mornings reviewing industry trends, sharing articles with Ethan and Lily, and suggesting new strategies. They listened, and more often than not, they acted on my advice. It was a strange feeling being valued not just for my money, but for my mind. At home, I found myself reflecting on the past. I'd spent so much of my life in the background, supporting others without seeking recognition. After Tom's death, I'd poured everything into raising Lily, then into helping her build a life with Ethan. But now, I was starting to see myself differently. I wasn't just a mother or an investor, I was Eleanor Harper, a woman with stories, skills, and a voice that deserved to be heard. One afternoon, I was at the community center, teaching my literacy class, when Margaret, my student, pulled me aside. Eleanor, you've been different lately, she said, her eyes twinkling. You're older. What's going on? I laughed, surprised by her observation. I suppose I'm finding my place again, I said. It's been a long time since I felt like I mattered. You've always mattered, she said firmly. You just forgot to remind the world. Her words stayed with me, a reminder that I'd let Ethan's comments define me for too long. I wasn't old people. I was a woman who'd lived, loved, and learned. And I was done hiding. That evening, I invited Ethan and Lily over for a heart-to-heart. I wanted to clear the air, to make sure we were all on the same page. As we sat in my living room, the fire crackling softly, I spoke first. Ethan, I've forgiven you for what you said. I began, my voice steady. But I need you to understand something. Age doesn't make me less. It makes me more experienced, more resilient, more capable. I want us to move forward as equals. Ethan nodded, his face serious. I get it, Eleanor. I was an idiot. And I'm sorry. I want to earn your trust. Not just for the company, but for our family. Lily reached for my hand, her eyes bright with emotion. Mom, I'm so proud of you. I had no idea how much you've been carrying. We talked late into the night, sharing stories, fears, and hopes. Ethan opened up about his own insecurities, about the pressure to prove himself in a world that moved too fast. Lily admitted she'd been scared to confront him, afraid of disrupting their marriage. And I shared my own journey, from the grief of losing Tom to the quiet strength I'd found in supporting them. As they left, Ethan hugged me, a real hug this time, not awkward or forced. Thank you, Eleanor, he said, for everything. The company continued to grow, but so did our family. Ethan and Lily invited me to more events, not as an obligation, but because they wanted me there. I started speaking up in meetings, offering ideas that surprised even me. I wasn't just a silent investor anymore, I was a voice, a presence, a force. One day, I received a letter from Margaret. Inside was a poem she'd written, inspired by our classes. It spoke of resilience, of finding light in the shadows of age. I framed it and hung it in my study, a reminder of the woman I was becoming. But challenges remained. A competitor launched a rival product, threatening our market share. Ethan was rattled, but I saw an opportunity. Let's pivot, I said during a strategy meeting. Focus on what makes us unique, our story, our values. People don't just buy products. They buy meaning. Ethan and Lily took the idea and ran with it, launching a campaign that highlighted the company's journey, including my role as the unsung hero. The response was overwhelming. Customers connected with the authenticity, and sales soared. As the company thrived, so did my relationship with Ethan. He stopped making offhand comments about my age and started seeking my advice, not just on business, but on life. One evening, as we sat on my porch, he turned to me. Eleanor, I wish I'd seen you sooner, he said, not just as Lily's mom, but as you. I smiled, the warmth of his words settling in my chest. Better late than never, I said. The journey wasn't over, but I felt a sense of peace. I'd stepped out of the shadows, not just for Ethan and Lily, but for myself. I was Eleanor Harper, and I was far from invisible. The company's success brought new opportunities, but it also brought new pressures. Ethan was busier than ever, juggling meetings with investors and overseeing production. Lily threw herself into the marketing campaign, her creativity shining. I took on a more active role, too, advising on long-term strategy and mentoring the younger employees. It was exhausting, but it felt good to be needed, to be part of something bigger than myself. At home, I started redecorating, painting the walls in soft blues and greens, colors that felt fresh and alive. I bought a new wardrobe, trading my old cardigans for tailored blouses and vibrant scarves. It wasn't about denying my age, it was about embracing who I was now, a woman who'd lived through loss and found her strength. One morning, I was at the community center when I got a call from Lily. Her voice was tight with worry. "Mom, it's Ethan. He's been working himself to the bone, and I'm scared he's going to burn out." I drove to their house, my heart heavy. Ethan was in his home office, surrounded by papers and empty coffee cups. He looked exhausted, his eyes shadowed with fatigue. "Ethan, you need to slow down," I said, sitting across from him. "You're no good to anyone if you collapse." He rubbed his face, his voice hoarse. "I know, Eleanor, but there's so much riding on this. If I mess up, we could lose everything." I reached for his hand, my voice firm but kind. "You're not alone in this. You have Lily. You have me. You have a whole team. Let us help." He looked at me, his eyes searching mine. "I don't know how to do that," he admitted. "I've always thought I had to do it all myself." I smiled, remembering Tom's words from years ago. Strength isn't doing everything, Alan, it's knowing when to lean on others. "You're learning," I said. "That's enough for now." We spent the afternoon restructuring his workload, delegating tasks to the team. Lily joined us, her presence a calming force. By the end of the day, Ethan looked lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. As the weeks passed, I noticed a change in our dynamic. Ethan and Lily started coming to me for advice, not just about the company, but about their marriage, their dreams. I listened, offering what wisdom I could, and in return, they shared their world with me. We were a family, not just in name, but in spirit. One evening, I was invited to speak at a local business conference, a chance to share my story as the company's silent investor. I was nervous, but Lily coached me through it, helping me craft a speech that was honest and heartfelt. When I took the stage, I looked out at the crowd, young entrepreneurs, seasoned executives, and everyone in between. I told them about my journey, about the pain of being dismissed, the power of stepping into the light. The applause was deafening, but it was Lily's tearful smile in the front row that meant the most. Afterward, Ethan pulled me aside. "Eleanor, that was incredible. I'm so proud to know you." I laughed, brushing off the compliment. Just doing what I've always done, showing up. The company continued to grow, but so did my sense of purpose. I started a mentorship program at the community center, helping seniors find their voice in a world that often overlooked them. I shared my story, not as a victim, but as a survivor, a woman who'd refused to be defined by others' words. One day, I found a note slipped under my door. It was from Ethan, written in his hurried scrawl. "Eleanor, you've changed everything for us. Thank you for teaching me what strength really means." I tucked the note into my purse, next to Margaret's poem. They were reminders of the life I'd built, not just for others, but for myself. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was Eleanor Harper, and I was enough. The seasons changed, and with them, our family grew stronger. Ethan's company launched a new product, one that blended innovation with the values we'd fought so hard to preserve. It was a hit, and the financial strain began to ease. I watched Ethan and Lily thrive, their partnership a testament to the trust we'd rebuilt. But life has a way of testing you, even when things seem stable. One morning, I got a call from Clara, my financial advisor. "Eleanor, There's an issue with one of your other investments, she said, her voice tense. A real estate deal Tom set up years ago, it's falling apart. You could lose a significant chunk of your savings. My heart sank. I'd poured so much into Ethan's company. And now this. I spent the day with Clara, digging into the details. The deal was salvageable, but it would require time, money, and energy resources I was already stretching thin. I didn't tell Lily or Ethan. They had enough on their plates, and I didn't want to worry them. But as I sat in my study that night, the weight of it all pressed down on me. I'd spent so long being strong, being the one who held everything together. Could I do it again? The next day, I went to the community center, seeking solace in the familiar. My students greeted me with their usual warmth. But Margaret noticed the strain in my eyes. "Eleanor, what's wrong?" she asked, pulling me aside. I hesitated, then told her about the real estate deal, the fear of losing what I'd worked so hard to protect. She listened, her face calm but attentive. "You've carried a lot, haven't you?" she said. "But you don't have to carry it alone." Her words echoed Ethan's from months ago, and I realized she was right. I'd learned to step out of the shadows, but I still struggled to ask for help. That evening, I called Lily and Ethan over and told them everything. Lily's face paled. "Mom, why didn't you say something sooner?" "I didn't want to burden you," I said, my voice soft. Ethan leaned forward, his eyes earnest. "Eleanor, you're not a burden. You're family. Let us help." We spent the next week working together, consulting with Clara, and devising a plan to save the investment. Ethan used his business connections to negotiate with the real estate firm, while Lily researched alternative strategies. I was amazed by their determination, their willingness to fight for me. In the end, we saved the deal, though it cost more than I'd hoped. But the loss felt less like a failure and more like a shared victory. We'd faced it together, as a family. As the company grew, so did my role in the community. My mentorship program expanded, and I started speaking at more events, sharing my story of resilience and reinvention. I wasn't just Eleanor Harper, the investor or the mother-in-law. I was a voice for those who felt unseen, a reminder that age was not a barrier but a badge of experience. One evening, as I sat with Lily and Ethan at a company dinner, a young employee approached me. "Mrs. Harper, I heard your speech at the conference," she said, her eyes bright. "It made me want to keep going, even when things get tough." I smiled, my heart full. "That's all any of us can do," I said. "Keep going, and lift each other up." Later, as we walked to the car, Ethan put an arm around my shoulders. "You're a force, Eleanor," he said, his voice warm. "I'm lucky to have you in my corner." I laughed, the sound light and free. "And I'm lucky to have you both." The journey wasn't over, but I knew we'd face whatever came next together. I was no longer the silent investor, the overlooked mother-in-law. I was Eleanor Harper, and I was seen. The company's success brought a new rhythm to our lives. Ethan and Lily were busier than ever, but they made time for family dinners, for long conversations over coffee. I cherished those moments, the laughter and stories that wove us closer. But I also found myself seeking more purpose, more connection, more ways to leave a mark. I expanded my work at the community center, launching a scholarship fund for seniors who wanted to pursue new skills. I named it after Tom, a way to honor his legacy while building my own. The response was overwhelming. Dozens applied, their stories of resilience and hope filling my heart. I realized I wasn't just helping them. They were helping me, reminding me that life was never too late for reinvention. One afternoon, I was invited to speak at a national conference for women in business. The invitation came as a surprise, but Lily insisted I accept. "Mom, you have a story to tell," she said. "People need to hear it." I spent weeks preparing, writing and rewriting my speech. When the day came, I stood on the stage, my hands trembling but my voice steady. I spoke of my journey from the grief of losing Tom to the pain of Ethan's words, from silence to strength. I spoke of the power of being seen, of refusing to let age define you. The audience was riveted, their applause echoing long after I finished. Afterward, women approached me, sharing their own stories of feeling invisible, of fighting to be heard. I listened, my heart swelling with pride and purpose. I wasn't just Eleanor Harper anymore, I was a voice, a beacon, a reminder that every life had value. At home, Ethan and Lily threw a small party to celebrate. The living room was filled with friends, colleagues, and my students from the community center. Margaret read a new poem, her voice strong and clear. Ethan raised a glass, his eyes meeting mine. "To Eleanor," he said, "the woman who taught us all what it means to show up." I smiled, tears prickling my eyes. "To family," I said, lifting my glass, "and to never giving up." As the company grew, so did our challenges. A new competitor emerged, more aggressive than the last. Ethan was rattled, but I saw it as another opportunity. We brainstormed late into the night, crafting a strategy that leaned on our strengths: authenticity, community, connection. The campaign was a success, and the company held its ground. But the real victory was personal. Ethan and I had become partners, not just in business, but in life. He sought my advice, valued my perspective, and treated me with a respect I'd never thought possible. Lily, too, had grown, her confidence shining as she took on more responsibility. One evening, as we sat on my porch, Ethan turned to me. "Eleanor, I've been thinking about the future," he said. "I want to make sure the company reflects your values, too. You're not just an investor, you're the heart of this." I was touched, but I shook my head. "It's not my company, Ethan. It's yours and Lily's. I'm just here to help you shine." He smiled, his eyes warm. "You do more than that. You make us better." As the months passed, I found a balance between my work at the company and my life at the community center. I was busy, but I was fulfilled. I'd spent so long in the shadows, but now I was living in the light, surrounded by people who saw me, valued me, loved me. And in the quiet moments, when I sat in my study with a cup of tea, I thought of Tom. I imagined him smiling, proud of the woman I'd become. I wasn't just his widow or Lily's mother or Ethan's investor. I was Eleanor Harper, and I was enough. The years that followed were a tapestry of challenges and triumphs. Ethan's company became a leader in its field, known not just for innovation, but for its heart. Lily's marketing campaigns won awards, and I took pride in watching her shine. I stepped back from the day-to-day operations, trusting them to lead while I focused on my work at the community center. The scholarship fund grew, touching lives across the city. I met with students, listened to their dreams, and helped them find their paths. Each success felt like a victory, a reminder that age was no barrier to purpose. I spoke at more conferences, sharing my story with audiences around the world. My message was simple: you are never too old to be seen, to matter, to make a difference. Ethan and Lily welcomed a daughter, a bright-eyed girl they named Eleanor in my honor. Holding her for the first time, I felt a rush of love and gratitude. She was a symbol of everything we'd built together, a family rooted in trust, forgiveness, and resilience. One evening, as we gathered for her first birthday, Ethan pulled me aside. "Eleanor, I've been thinking about what you said all those years ago," he said. "About being equals. About respecting the people who lift you up. I want you to know I've never forgotten it." I smiled, my heart full. "You've more than proven it, Ethan." He handed me a small box, wrapped in silver paper. Inside was a pendant, engraved with the words, "To Eleanor, the heart of our family." I hugged him, tears streaming down my face. It wasn't just the gift, it was the recognition, the love, the journey we'd shared. As I looked around the room, at Lily laughing with her daughter, at my students from the community center sharing stories, at the life I'd built, I felt a profound sense of peace. I'd faced dismissal, doubt, and loss, but I'd also found strength, purpose, and love. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was Eleanor Harper, and I was home. The company continued to thrive, but it was the small moments that mattered most: the quiet dinners, the shared laughter, the knowledge that we'd faced the worst and come out stronger. I'd learned to forgive, to trust, to step into the light. And in doing so, I'd helped Ethan and Lily do the same. As I sat on my porch that night, the stars bright above, I thought of the woman I'd been when this story began. She'd felt small, dismissed, defined by others' words. But now, I was so much more. I was a mother, a mentor, a partner, a voice. I was Eleanor Harper, and I was enough.